plan to encourage building knowledge about and educational programs for students and practitioners. So in 1984, Brian O'Connell, who was thrilled with this result, asked Bob to write the essay and keynote the independent sector meeting on major trends in philanthropy. This essay was the development and compilation of several years of Bob's thinking about philanthropy. And I remember his excitement, although he's very nervous because here he's put this big essay out to 400 practitioners who may not want to read more than a little summary at any one time. But people were talking up a storm. As many of you know, Bob, the only time he ever attended a session in a conference was when he was forced to participate in it. Otherwise, he wanted to talk and learn in the corridors. He told me this is where he learned a lot. And that meeting in 1984 took place mostly in the corridors. His essay became the basis of the volume Philanthropy, Voluntary Action for the Public Good, published a few years later. Another high point in our attempt to stimulate universities to pay a little attention to this topic was when the Lilly Endowment announced that it would provide funds for a Center on Philanthropy as its celebration for its 50th anniversary. And as Charles Johnson said when I asked him, how did you come to make the decision? Why did you choose being influenced by Bob? Why did you choose building of a center? And he said, my question is why it took us so long to do so. What a gift. Bob had already moved to Charlottesville, Virginia, when he was asked to consult on the planning. I served on a few committees. His excitement and the excitement around the country was just electric. He was providing his vision of engaging the whole university to query its relation to philanthropy. And when Indiana started its search for the director, Bob was mentioned all the time. He held out for a year while continuing to play a very large and very active role in planning for the center. In spring of 1988, we were returning to the conference center, which was being built around us, by the way, from one of the planning meetings when I asked him if he would reconsider because the position was just perfect for him and he could make a contribution to the whole nation. And he had been thinking about it, and the time was running out. So he told me that he would pick up Polly in St. Louis and have a long talk back home to Charlottesville. And Polly, Bob's greatest supporter, agreed to move to Indiana. He provided the leadership that all of you are talking about, and he was uniquely able at this point in the history of the center. His broad experience as an editor, writer, fundraiser, university president, and president of the largest corporate foundation for education, and as an ambassador, led him to be a persuasive communicator. It was the breadth of his experience and his love of learning that provided the initial leadership to the great enterprise of the center. In 1992, when he chaired a conference on international research and education, we founded the International Society for Third Sector Research. This was a long-standing interest for both of us. In fact, in 1987, we set a calendar for the IS annual research forums for an international theme in 1990 in Boston. Many of our colleagues thought we would not get much of an audience, but it was the best attended research conference held by IS in all the years that it held those conferences. One WAG suggested to Bob and me that we brought down the Berlin Wall just to prove him wrong. The last time I was able to spend any time with Bob was when he was given the John Gardner Public Service Award. He told me this was the big one. I was able to stand in the corridors with him that Tuesday morning as he talked to so many others. It was a great meeting, and all of his family were in attendance. And on a personal note, Bob was a great family member and friend, and I had the opportunity to share some time with both Bob and Polly. And he told me the story of how he met and married Polly, the love of his life. He loved his children with a passion, and he loved his grandchildren. And he was a true friend. In the winter of 1985, I had a meeting with Bob to raise funds for the IS research program, soon after my son Randy died. When I met Bob at his office at Exxon, he asked me to sit down for a few minutes, and he tried to help me prepare about moments of grief I was going to experience. I felt that at that point I was held together with paper clips. And one thing I remember is he said to expect memory to come rushing in at the most surprising of times. He talked about walking down a street occasionally and seeing someone in the distance that looked exactly like one of his sons. I was having similar experiences. He was very helpful and very understanding. He and Polly were also very generous. Not only did they help establish the Joseph and Matthew Payton Philanthropic Studies Library, but they contribute to many other causes. Before I left IS, I received a copy of a letter to the president of Independent Sector from Bob and Polly, stating that they wanted to create a research prize in my name, which they funded for 5 years. They wanted the gift to remain anonymous. But for someone in awe of Robert Payton, this was a tribute I will remember all my life. So thank you, Bob Payton, for being with us, for helping to provide a broad knowledge area for the study of philanthropy. I am grateful to have worked with you and to have known you, and my life and the lives of many others are richer for it. And now I'd like to introduce you to Gerald L. Betko, who was there at the beginning, Chancellor of the university. Thank you.
I did wonder for a few minutes why someone who was there at the beginning and has been retired for 8 years and as old as I am would be put last on the program. I should think you would have wanted me right at the beginning so I might be fresh and alive. I'm also the last to speak in this really distinguished gathering of friends and admirers of Bob Payton. I knew when we reached this point in the program I'd be more than a little uncomfortable because after listening to the excellent comments of others, I anticipated that I would feel that there was nothing really left to say, and I would be even more worried that everyone else had said things that were expressed better than I could express them. So I'm not going to try to sum up. I think in the vogue of the current communications technologies, which I know very little about, like tweeting and Twitter, I'll just give my message. I agree. I'd like to go back to the beginning and say a few words, though, maybe that haven't been said. For me, in 1987, the concept brought forward by Gene Temple, Charles Johnson, Hank Rosso, and others, the concept for a center on philanthropy was immediately recognizable as a great idea. More than 15 years earlier, I had been fortunate to spend time as a student of a man named John Simon at the Yale Law School, someone who had quite a reputation in the world of philanthropy, something I learned about only after I had him as a professor. It was a course that was focused on law and the not-for-profit world and probed many of the dimensions of American not-for-profit institutions. I'd listened to John and his colleague Quentin Johnstone, who co-taught the course, another Yale Law School mentor. I heard them talk about the study of philanthropy as much more than the legal regime that had been created